The morning sun barely kissed the marble floors of the DeMarco mansion when Alicia Carter slipped through the service entrance, her fingers trembling as they reached for the door handle. The bandage on her left cheek felt like it was burning, practically shouting her secret to anyone who bothered to look closely. She pressed her hand against it, willing it to disappear, to become invisible. Knowing that was a hopeless wish, she reminded herself that she'd been working as a maid in Anthony DeMarco's estate for 6 months now, and in all that time she'd perfected the art of being unseen. It was the only way to survive in a house ruled by one of the most powerful mafia bosses on the East Coast. Stay quiet, keep your head down, never make eye contact. Those were the rules that kept people like her alive in a world like his. But today everything felt different, heavier. Today she carried more than just her usual fear. Today she carried evidence, a secret. If you've ever had to hide something that could change everything, you know exactly what Alicia was feeling in that moment. The weight of a secret can be heavier than any physical burden. But what happens when the most dangerous man you know discovers the truth you've been desperately trying to keep hidden? Stay with us, because what unfolds next will show you that sometimes protection comes from the most unexpected places. And if this story resonates with you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because we share powerful stories like this every single week. Alicia had learned to move through the mansion like a shadow, a whisper. At 28, she'd already mastered more survival skills than most people learned in a lifetime. Growing up in South Brooklyn, raising her 7-year-old son Marcus alone, working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads, all of it had taught her that invisibility was the greatest shield a woman like her could possibly have. The DeMarco mansion was unlike anything she'd ever known. 23 rooms of Italian marble, imported silk, and crystal chandeliers that cost more than she'd make in 10 years. She cleaned these rooms every day, her dark brown hands scrubbing surfaces that gleamed like mirrors. Her natural curls were always pulled back in a tight bun that gave her headaches by noon. But the pay was good, better than good, actually. It was enough to finally afford Marcus asthma medication without having to choose between that and groceries. Anthony DeMarco himself was a mystery, wrapped in expensive suits and a deadly calm. She'd seen him maybe a dozen times in 6 months, always from a distance, always with that aura of controlled violence that made her stomach clench. At 32, he commanded respect with just his presence. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that seemed to see everything, and a way of moving that reminded her of a predator circling its prey. She'd heard the whispers from the other staff, how he'd taken over the family business at 25 after his father's murder, how he'd eliminated 3 rival families in 1 brutal month, how people who crossed him simply disappeared. Maria, the head housekeeper, had warned her on her first day. Mr. DeMarco values 2 things above all else: loyalty and discretion. Give him both and you'll be fine. Betray either. And she hadn't needed to finish that sentence. So Alicia kept her head down and her secrets even closer. The most important secret being that she'd left Marcus with Mrs. Chun next door that morning with strict instructions not to open the door for anyone, not even his own father. 3 days ago, Derek, Marcus's father and Alicia's biggest mistake, had found them. After 2 years of blessed silence, he'd shown up at their tiny apartment, drunk and angry about money he claimed she owed him. When she'd refused to let him in, when she'd threatened to call the police, he'd grabbed her face and slammed it against the doorframe. "You think you're too good for me now?" he'd snarled, his breath reeking of whiskey. "You think that fancy house you clean makes you better than where you came from?" She'd managed to lock the door before he could do worse, but the damage was done. The bruise bloomed dark purple against her brown skin, and she'd covered it with the largest bandage she could find at the drugstore. She'd called in sick the next 2 days, terrified of losing this job that meant everything to her and Marcus. But bills didn't care about bruises. So here she was, praying no one would notice, praying she could keep this job just a little longer until she figured out what to do about Derek. She was polishing the silverware in the formal dining room when she felt that electric charge in the air that meant Anthony DeMarco was near. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she kept her face turned away, focusing intently on a fork that was already gleaming. "Ms. Carter." His voice was deep, cultured, with just a hint of the Italian accent he'd inherited from his grandfather. She froze, fork suspended in mid-polish. "Yes, Mr. DeMarco?" She kept her voice steady, kept her bandaged cheek angled away from him. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you." It wasn't a request. It was never a request with men like him. Slowly, heart pounding so hard she thought he must hear it, Alicia turned to face her employer for the first time in 6 months. He stood in the doorway, 6 feet of controlled power in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. His dark eyes swept over her face, and she watched as they stopped, fixed, narrowed on the white bandage covering her left cheek. The silence stretched like a rubber band pulled to the breaking point. "What happened to your face?" His tone hadn't changed, but something in the air shifted, became dangerous. I fell, Mr. DeMarco. Clumsy of me. It's nothing." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but it was the lie women like her had been telling since the beginning of time. He moved closer, each step deliberate, and she fought the urge to back away. When he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody, he stopped. "You fell." It wasn't a question. It was him letting her know he didn't believe her for a second. "Yes, sir." His jaw tightened. "Remove the bandage." Everything was about to change in that moment, and Alicia knew it. Sometimes the truth we try so desperately to hide has a way of revealing itself at exactly the moment when we're least prepared. What happened next would set in motion events that no one could have predicted. Keep watching, because Anthony DeMarco's reaction was unlike anything anyone expected. And if you're invested in this story, show us by clicking that like button. It helps us share more powerful narratives like this one. "Mr. DeMarco, remove it." There was steel in his voice now, the kind that made hardened criminals confess to crimes they didn't commit. "Or I'll do it myself." With trembling fingers, Alicia reached for the bandage. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but where would she go? This man owned half the city. If he wanted answers, he'd get them one way or another. The adhesive pulled at her skin as she slowly peeled away the bandage. She couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see the disgust or the pity that would surely be there. The bruise was spectacular. A violent burst of purple and blue that spread from her cheekbone to her jaw, the edges yellowing as it started to heal. The silence was worse than any words could have been. When she finally dared to glance up, what she saw in Anthony DeMarco's face made her breath catch. It wasn't pity. It wasn't disgust. It was rage, pure, cold, lethal rage that transformed his handsome features into something terrifying. "Who?" One word, spoken so quietly it was almost a whisper, but carrying the weight of an execution order. "Mr. DeMarco, please." It wasn't, "Who did this to you?" He stepped closer, and she watched his hands clench into fists before he deliberately relaxed them. "Tell me his name." "I can't." Her voice broke on the words. I can't. "Miss Carter." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tilted her chin so their eyes met. "I asked you a question. In my world, that requires an answer." "He's nobody," she whispered. "Just someone from my past." "It doesn't matter." "It matters." Something flickered in his dark eyes, something almost human beneath all that controlled violence. "It matters because you work in my house under my protection. And someone marked you while you were under my protection." "I don't need protection." The words came out fiercer than she intended. "I've been taking care of myself and my son for years. I'll handle it." She regretted the words the instant they left her mouth. She'd broken the first rule. She'd revealed information about her personal life, given him a piece of herself that could be used against her. His expression changed. "You have a son?" It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway, unable to take back what she'd already said. "How old?" 7. "And his father? The man who did this?" Anthony gestured to her face. Alicia's throat tightened. Marcus's father hasn't been in the picture for 2 years. Until 3 days ago." "What changed 3 days ago?" he demanded. She wanted to lie, wanted to spin some story that would make all of this go away. But something in his eyes, some strange combination of authority and genuine concern, made the truth spill out. He found out where we live, showed up drunk, demanding money. When I wouldn't let him in, when I told him I'd call the police, she touched her cheek gently. This happened. Anthony's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jump. His name, Miss Carter, his name. Derek. Derek Williams. The name felt like poison in her mouth. But please, I'm begging you, just let it go. I'll handle it. I'll get a restraining order. A restraining order? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. A piece of paper? You think that will stop a man who's already shown he's willing to hurt you? It's all I have. The words burst out of her, raw and desperate. I can't have you involved in this. I can't owe you anything. Don't you understand? People like me, we survive by staying invisible. By not drawing attention. By not. She gestured helplessly between them. By not getting involved with people like you. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, to her utter shock, he smiled. It was a small smile, almost sad. Miss Carter, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen very carefully. He stepped back, giving her space, but his eyes never left hers. You became my concern the moment you accepted employment in this house. Every person who works for me, who enters my home, who trusts me to provide for them, they are mine to protect. That is not negotiable. It is not optional. It is the code I live by. I don't want to be anyone's responsibility, she whispered. Too late. He pulled out his phone. Marco, I need a full background check on a Derek Williams. South Brooklyn area, girlfriend and 7-year-old son named Marcus. I want his address, his employment, his habits, and his criminal record on my desk in 1 hour. Mr. DeMarco, please. He held up one hand, still on the phone. Also, I need a security detail, too. He looked at her questioningly. She closed her eyes in defeat. 2247 Cypress Avenue, 3rd floor. 2247 Cypress Avenue, 3rd floor. Discreet. I want them watching, but invisible. And I want surveillance on the kids' school. He ended the call and looked at her. What school does Marcus attend? Lycan Elementary. She felt like she was watching her carefully constructed life unravel thread by thread. You can't do this. You can't just insert yourself into our lives. Watch me. He moved to the door, then paused. You're taking the rest of the week off with full pay. I need this job. Panic clawed at her throat. Please, Mr. DeMarco, don't fire me. I'll work harder. He turned back, and something in his expression softened. I'm not firing you, Miss Carter. I'm making sure you have time to heal and to get your son settled. And I'm making sure that the man who hurt you understands that he made a very grave mistake. What are you going to do to him? His smile was cold as winter. Nothing permanent, unless he's stupid enough to come near you again. Then, he shrugged eloquently. Then he'll wish I'd been merciful the first time. And just like that, Alicia Carter's carefully controlled world had been turned upside down. She'd spent years building walls to protect herself and Marcus. And in one conversation, Anthony DeMarco had walked right through them as if they were made of paper. But was this protection or possession? Was this care or control? The line was about to become very blurred, and what happened next would challenge everything both of them thought they knew about power, protection, and the walls we build around our hearts. Don't miss what happens next. And if you believe everyone deserves someone willing to fight for them, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. 3 days passed in a strange kind of suspended reality. Alicia stayed in her apartment, watching Marcus color pictures at their tiny kitchen table, jumping every time she heard footsteps in the hallway. But Derek never came. Not once. On the second day, she'd found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was 2 weeks' salary in cash and a note in bold, masculine handwriting. *for anything you and Marcus need. She stared at that money for a full hour, tears burning her eyes. It was more than money. It was a statement. It was him reminding her that she was under his protection now, whether she wanted to be or not. That evening, her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Miss Carter. Anthony's voice sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. How are you and Marcus doing? We're fine, Mr. DeMarco. About the money. Keep it. Consider it a signing bonus. For what? For agreeing to let me keep you both safe. She sank onto her worn couch, suddenly exhausted. You didn't give me much of a choice. No, he agreed quietly. I didn't, but I'm calling to give you one now. Derek Williams is currently in police custody. Turns out he had an outstanding warrant for assault from 2 years ago. Funny how these things come to light when someone takes the time to look. Her heart stuttered. You got him arrested? I simply made sure the proper authorities were aware of his location. What they did with that information was up to them. She could hear the smile in his voice. He'll be arraigned tomorrow. The prosecutor handling his case happens to be very thorough. I imagine he'll be away for quite some time. Why are you doing this? The question burst out of her. You don't know me. Marcus and I are nothing to you. Why do you care? The silence on the other end stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. Then, my mother was a maid. His voice was different now, quieter, more reflective. She worked for a family in Manhattan. Rich, powerful people who treated her like furniture. When my father's business associates came around asking questions, threatening her to get to him, her employers didn't lift a finger. They told her it wasn't their problem, that she'd brought her troubles to their door and should leave. Alicia's breath caught. She came home bleeding from a broken arm one night. I was 8 years old. My father was in prison. We had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. That night, I promised myself that if I ever had power, if I ever had the ability to protect people, I would never turn my back the way those people turned their backs on my mother. What happened to her? Alicia whispered. She survived, got stronger, learned to fight back. He paused. But she never should have had to. So, when I see a woman in my house working hard, taking care of her son, and someone hurts her, that's not a choice for me, Miss Carter. That's a promise I made a long time ago. Tears were streaming down Alicia's face now. I don't know what to say. Say you'll come back to work when you're ready. Say you'll let me know if you or Marcus need anything. That's all I ask. Okay. She wiped at her eyes. Okay. I can do that. Good. She could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Oh, and Miss Carter, the security detail will remain on your building and Marcus's school. Invisible but present. This is non-negotiable. Before she could protest, he'd hung up. 2 weeks later, when Alicia returned to work, she found Anthony in his study, working through a stack of papers. He looked up when she knocked hesitantly on the open door. Ms. Carter. His face changed somehow when he saw her. The hardness softened just slightly around the edges. You look better. The bruise had faded to a yellowish shadow that she'd covered with makeup. I am better. Thank you for everything. He set down his pen. I did what anyone with a conscience should do. That's not true, and you know it. She stepped into the room, nervous but determined. Most people in your position wouldn't have cared. You could have just fired me to avoid the complications. Then they're not worthy of the power they hold. He stood, moving around the desk. Power without responsibility is just tyranny. Something about the way he looked at her made her heart skip. This man, this dangerous, complicated man, had shown her more genuine care than almost anyone else in her life. I want to pay you back, she said suddenly. The money, the help with Derek, everything. I need to pay you back. His expression hardened. Absolutely not. But I can't just. You can and you will. He moved closer, and she forced herself not to step back. This is not a debt, Miss Carter. This is not something you owe me. This is me doing what's right because I have the power to do it. Understand? She swallowed hard. I'm not used to people helping without expecting something in return. Get used to it. His voice softened slightly. You're under my protection now. That means something in my world. Over the following weeks, Alicia discovered exactly what that meant. It meant Marcus being accepted into a better school, one with an excellent asthma program, with a full scholarship that appeared out of nowhere. It meant her ancient car being replaced by a newer, safer model that mysteriously showed up with her name on the registration. It meant never worrying about having enough food in the refrigerator, because a grocery delivery appeared every week without her ordering it. It also meant noticing things like how Anthony always seemed to be in whatever room she was cleaning, working quietly, but watching her with those dark, intense eyes. Like how he started asking about Marcus, what he liked, what he was learning in school, whether his asthma was under control. Like how one day she came to work and found a state-of-the-art nebulizer sitting on her cleaning cart with a note. Asterisk better than the one at the clinic for Marcus. Asterisk she'd cried right there in the hallway, clutching that note like it was a lifeline. Maria, the head housekeeper, pulled her aside one afternoon. "I've worked for the DeMarco family for 15 years. The older woman said quietly. "I've never seen Mr. Anthony look at anyone the way he looks at you. Be careful, chica. That man's world is dangerous. But his heart, that's the most dangerous thing of all." Alicia knew she should be scared, should put up walls, keep her distance. Remember that men like Anthony DeMarco lived in a different world, one of violence and secrets and moral codes that normal people couldn't understand. But when she thought about how safe she felt for the first time in years, how Marcus was thriving, how Derek's court date kept getting continued with more charges being added each time, charges that would keep him in prison for years, she couldn't quite make herself care about the shoulds. Lines were being crossed that neither of them had planned to cross. Alicia was supposed to be just another employee, and Anthony was supposed to be just another boss. But life doesn't care about supposed to, does it? When protection turns to care, and care turns to something deeper, sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is admit what you're really feeling. And that moment was coming faster than either of them realized. Stay with us. This story is about to take a turn that will change everything. If you're feeling this emotional journey, let us know in the comments below. It happened on a Tuesday, exactly 2 months after the day Anthony first saw her bandage. Alicia was cleaning the third-floor library, her favorite room in the mansion, filled with leather-bound books and the smell of old paper and expensive scotch. She was reaching for a high shelf when the ladder shifted beneath her. For one terrifying moment, she felt herself falling backward, her arms windmilling uselessly. Then strong hands caught her, steadied her, pulled her against a solid chest that smelled of cologne and danger. "I've got you." Anthony's voice was rough against her ear. "You're safe." She should have pulled away, should have thanked him professionally and put proper distance between them. Instead, she found herself turning in his arms, her hands resting against his chest, her breath coming too fast. He was so close she could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body, could hear his breathing shift and deepen as he looked down at her. Alicia. Her name on his lips sent electricity down her spine. He'd never used her first name before. "I'm trying very hard to be honorable here." Honorable? Her voice was barely a whisper. Honorable. His hand came up to cup her cheek, the one that had been bruised, now healed, but still tender in her memory. "You work for me. You're vulnerable. Taking advantage of that would make me no better than the man who hurt you." "I don't feel vulnerable right now." The words escaped before she could stop them. I don't know what I feel." His thumb traced her cheekbone, gentle as a prayer. "What do you want, Alicia? Tell me, because I need to know if I'm reading this wrong. If I'm seeing something that isn't there." "I don't know what's there." Honesty felt like jumping off a cliff. "I know you've been kind to me and Marcus. I know I feel safe for the first time in years. I know that when I see you, my heart does the stupid thing where it speeds up, and I can't quite catch my breath. But I also know that your world is dangerous, and I have a son to protect, and getting involved with someone like you would be reckless." He gave a small, knowing smile. "Dangerous, complicated beyond measure. All of that. You're right about everything." But he didn't release her. "Getting tangled up with me would only complicate your life in ways you absolutely don't need. My enemies would see you as a weakness, something to exploit. My lifestyle would put both you and Marcus in danger. The smartest, safest thing to do would be to keep this strictly professional." "Yes." Her heart shattered a little more with each word of agreement. The smart thing to do." He leaned in closer, his lips almost touching her forehead. But I stopped doing smart things the moment I decided you were my concern. The moment I saw that bruise and felt something inside me crack that I didn't even know was breakable. The moment I realized I couldn't go a single day without knowing that you and Marcus were safe. Anthony. His name felt both intimate and forbidden on her tongue. What are we doing? I don't know, he admitted. His honesty matched her own confusion. But I know I can't keep pretending I don't care. That you're just another employee. That I don't look for you every day when I come home. That I don't lie awake at night wondering what kind of father would abandon someone like Marcus. What kind of man would hurt someone like you? You can't fix what's broken inside me. Tears stung her eyes. I'm not some damsel in distress waiting to be rescued. I know that. He pulled back just enough to meet her gaze directly. You're one of the strongest people I've ever encountered. You're brilliant and brave, and you've survived things that would have destroyed weaker individuals. I don't want to fix you, Alicia. You're not broken. I just want, he paused, seemingly searching for the right words. I just want to be someone you can lean on. Someone who has your back no matter what. Someone who makes your life easier, not harder. And if I want more than that? The question slipped out before she could stop it. His eyes grew darker, more intense. Then we have a real problem. Because anything more would mean you accepting all of me, the good, the bad, and the absolutely terrifying. It would mean Marcus growing up in a world where his mother is involved with someone like me. It would mean constant danger, endless complications, and a life that's nothing like the normal one you've been trying so hard to build. I haven't had normal in a very long time, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Maybe I stopped wanting normal the day you noticed my bandage and decided to care. He made a low sound in his throat, a mix between a groan and a prayer. Alicia, if we do this, if we cross this line, there's absolutely no turning back. I don't do casual relationships. I don't do things halfway. If you're mine completely. And I protect what's mine with everything I have. That should terrify me. She reached up and gently touched his jaw. Why doesn't that terrify me? Maybe because you know I mean every word I say. His hand covered hers, his touch sending a jolt through her. Maybe because, for the first time, someone is offering you exactly what you've been too afraid to even ask for. And what's that? Absolute devotion, he breathed. His lips brushed her knuckles, sending shivers down her spine. Complete protection. Someone who will burn down the world before letting anyone hurt you or Marcus ever again. She should have been scared. Should have recognized the obsessive edge to his words, the possessive intensity burning in his eyes. But all she felt was safe, wanted, cherished in a way she had never experienced before. I have conditions, she heard herself say, the words surprisingly firm. Name them. Marcus comes first, always. If this, whatever this is, ever puts him at risk in any way, we stop immediately. Agreed. What else is there? I keep my job. I don't want to be some kept woman, dependent on you for everything. I want to work, to have my own money, to maintain my independence. His expression softened, a hint of amusement playing on his lips. You never have to worry about money again, Alicia. But if working is important to you, if it's something you need, then you work. What else is on your list? You teach me. She straightened her shoulders, meeting his intense gaze. About your world, about how to stay safe in it. About what Marcus needs to know as he gets older. If we're doing this, I need to understand exactly what I'm getting into. Done, he said, his voice resolute. He cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs gently caressing her cheekbones. Anything else, anything at all? Just? She took a shaky breath, trying to steady her racing pulse. Just don't break my heart, Anthony. I've been hurt enough. I can't, he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. I can't survive it if you ever. The word hung in the air between them, unspoken but understood. I will never hurt you, Alicia. I will never abandon you or Marcus. I will never give you any reason to regret trusting me. This I swear on everything I am. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home after a long journey and jumping off a cliff at the same time. His lips were gentle but insistent, almost reverent, asking for permission even as he took what he wanted. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss, and she felt him smile against her mouth. "So that's a yes, then?" he murmured between kisses, his breath warm against her skin. "That's a yes," she managed, breathless. But she was smiling too, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Don't think this means I'm going to stop being cautious. I would be disappointed if you did," he admitted, resting his forehead against hers. "Cautious is what kept you and Marcus alive all this time. But now you don't have to be cautious alone anymore." And with that kiss, everything shifted. Everything changed. The maid and the Mafia boss had crossed a line that society said shouldn't be crossed. That logic warned was too dangerous. That fear insisted would end in disaster. But sometimes the bravest thing we can do is take a chance on someone who sees us, truly sees us, for who we are and chooses to stay anyway. What happened next would test them both in ways they couldn't even begin to imagine. Keep watching to see how their story unfolds, how they navigate the treacherous path ahead. And don't forget to share this with someone who believes in the power of unexpected love, in the possibility of finding happiness in the most unlikely of places. The next 3 months were like living in a dream, a beautiful, fragile dream that Alicia was terrified of waking up from. Anthony insisted that she and Marcus move into one of his properties, a beautiful townhouse in a safe, quiet neighborhood with excellent schools nearby. She'd protested, of course, listing all the reasons why it wouldn't work, until he'd calmly pointed out that her tiny apartment, with its broken security door and questionable heating, was far more dangerous than anything she might encounter in his world. "You want to keep your independence?" he'd said, his voice firm but gentle. "Fine, pay me rent. Whatever you think is fair. But Marcus deserves better than that apartment, and you know it." She'd reluctantly agreed to pay $500 a month, which she knew was absurdly low for a 3-bedroom townhouse in this neighborhood. But he'd accepted it without argument. Small victories, she told herself, clinging to the illusion of control. Marcus took to their new life with the incredible adaptability of childhood. He loved his new school, loved having his own room, loved the fact that Mr. Tony came by most evenings to have dinner with them, making them feel like a real family. What he didn't know, what Alicia worked tirelessly to keep from him, was exactly who Mr. Tony was, or what he really did for a living. "He's a businessman," she'd explained when Marcus asked, carefully choosing her words. "He helps people solve problems." That was technically true, even if the problems Tony solved often involved making very bad people disappear. One evening, about 4 months into their relationship, Alicia was making dinner when Marcus rushed into the kitchen, his face pale, his inhaler clutched tightly in one hand. Mom, I can't breathe right." Her heart stopped. She grabbed the nebulizer that Tony had insisted they have on hand, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she set it up. Marcus was wheezing badly, his little chest heaving with the effort to get air. "It's okay, baby," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're going to fix this. Just breathe slowly like we practiced." But it wasn't working. The nebulizer wasn't helping, and Marcus's breathing was becoming increasingly labored. His lips were starting to turn blue. Terror clawed at her throat as she grabbed her phone and frantically dialed 911. Then, without thinking, acting purely on instinct, she called Tony. He answered on the first ring, his voice immediately alert. "Alicia, what's wrong?" "It's Marcus," she choked out, her voice thick with panic. "He's having an asthma attack. A bad one. An ambulance is coming. But I'm scared, Tony. I'm so scared." "I'm 10 minutes away," he said, his voice calm and reassuring despite the urgency of the situation. "Stay calm, Alicia. Keep him breathing. I'm coming." He made it in 7 minutes flat, bursting through the door just as the paramedics arrived. While they worked on Marcus, Tony pulled Alicia against his chest, his arms like steel bands holding her together when she felt like she was about to completely fall apart. "He'll be okay," he murmured into her hair, his voice a low rumble. "He's strong, just like his mother." At the hospital, while the doctors stabilized Marcus, Tony made calls, pulling strings that Alicia couldn't even imagine existed. Within an hour, the best pediatric pulmonologist in the entire state was consulting on Marcus's case, reviewing his records, and offering expert advice. By morning, they had a new treatment plan in place, one that promised to change everything for Marcus. Alicia watched all of this happen, watched Tony move heaven and earth for her son, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. This wasn't just protection anymore. This wasn't just care. This was love. The real, deep, terrifying kind of love that changes everything. When Marcus was finally sleeping peacefully, his breathing steady and strong, she found Tony in the waiting room, his head in his hands, his expensive suit wrinkled for the first time since she'd known him. "Tony," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. He looked up, and she saw it in his eyes, the same raw terror she'd felt, the same desperate, overwhelming love. "I thought." His voice cracked, and he struggled to compose himself. "When you called, when I heard the fear in your voice, I thought I might lose both of you." She sat beside him, reaching out and taking his hand in hers. "Both of us, you and Marcus," she confirmed gently. He turned to face her fully, his eyes filled with an intensity that made her heart ache. "Somewhere along the way he stopped being just your son, Alicia. He became a part of me, a part of my heart. In all the ways that truly matter, he's mine. And if something had happened to him..." Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. "Tony, you can't just claim my son," she said, her voice trembling. "I know," he admitted, his grip tightening on her hand. "I know I have no legal rights, no official claim, except what you give me. But Alicia, I love that little boy like he was my own blood. I would die for him, kill for him, move heaven and earth to keep him safe. If that makes me presumptuous, if that makes me overstepping, then I'm sorry, but I can't change how I feel." "I don't want you to change," she said, shaking her head. She pulled back slightly to look at him, her eyes searching his. "I want you to understand what this means, Tony. If you're claiming Marcus as yours, if you're taking on that kind of responsibility, you can't walk away when things get hard. You can't decide one day that this life is too complicated or that you want something easier." "I would never," he vowed, his hands framing her face, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "Alicia, listen to me. I don't do anything halfway. When I commit to something, it's forever. You and Marcus, you're my family now. My responsibility, yes, but also my joy, my purpose, the reason I come home every night instead of sleeping at the office. The reason I'm trying to build something legitimate, something I won't be ashamed for Marcus to know about when he's older." "You're changing your business," she said, stating the obvious. She'd heard rumors from the household staff, whispers about Tony transitioning away from the family's illegal operations and moving into legitimate enterprises. "I'm trying," he admitted, his voice laced with fatigue. He looked tired suddenly, older than his 32 years. "Slow, complicated, and dangerous because not everyone in my organization wants to go legitimate. But yes, I'm changing, Alicia. For Marcus, so he never has to know that his stepfather is a criminal. And for you, so you never have to worry that I'll be taken away from you both." "Stepfather," she echoed, the word hanging in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. His expression became guarded, his eyes suddenly unreadable. "Maybe," she managed, forcing a shaky smile. "It's probably too fast. Maybe," she repeated, trying to convince herself as much as him. "But also, maybe not. Maybe the fact that I can even imagine it means something. It means everything," he said, his voice low and intense. He kissed her softly, a tender, reassuring kiss. "I'm not going anywhere, Alicia. Not now, not ever. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. I'm here. You, me, and Marcus. That's my family. That's what matters." The graduation ceremony for Marcus's third-grade class was held in the school auditorium. Alicia sat in the audience, her hand clasped tightly in Tony's, watching her son receive an award for perfect attendance and academic excellence. "That's my boy," Tony whispered, pride shining brightly in his eyes. "Our boy," Alicia corrected softly, a warm smile spreading across her face. He looked at her, surprise and joy warring on his face. "Our boy? He asked me last week if he could call you Dad," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. Tears threatened to spill over, but these were happy tears, tears of overwhelming joy. "I told him he'd have to ask you himself." As if on cue, Marcus bounded over to them after the ceremony. his certificate clutched tightly in both hands, his face beaming with pride. "Mr. Tony, did you see? I got an award." "I saw it, buddy," Tony said, his voice filled with affection. "I'm so incredibly proud of you." Tony crouched down to Marcus's level, meeting his gaze directly. "That's going right up on the refrigerator, front and center." Marcus bit his lip, suddenly shy, his earlier exuberance fading slightly. "Mr. Tony, can I ask you something?" "Anything at all, Marcus," Tony assured him, his voice gentle. "Well, you're here all the time, you know? You have dinner with us, and you help me with my homework, and you came to the hospital when I was sick, and you do all the dad stuff." He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "Can I call you Dad? 'Cause it feels like you're my dad, even though I know you're not really." Tony's eyes went suspiciously bright, and he swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. "Marcus, I would be honored if you called me Dad," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "More honored than I can possibly express." "Really?" Marcus's face lit up like the sunrise, his eyes shining with unadulterated joy. "Really?" Tony pulled the boy into a fierce hug, burying his face in Marcus's hair. "I love you, kid. So much," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I love you too, Dad," Marcus replied, hugging him back just as tightly. Alicia covered her mouth with her hand, trying desperately not to sob. Tony reached out with his free arm and pulled her into the hug, the three of them standing there together in the emptying auditorium. A family forged not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by unwavering loyalty. That night, after Marcus was finally asleep, tucked safely into his bed, Tony and Alicia stood on the balcony of their townhouse, looking out at the glittering city lights spread out before them like a vast, shimmering tapestry. "I never imagined this," Alicia said softly, her voice filled with wonder. "6 months ago, I was terrified of losing my job. Now I have a home, a family, a future I never even dared to dream of." "The moment I saw that bandage on your face," Tony replied, his voice equally soft, something shifted inside me. "I couldn't have explained it then, but I can now. I saw a woman who was strong enough to survive anything, brave enough to protect her child at all costs, and too proud to ask for help, even when she desperately needed it. I saw myself in you, Alicia, or rather, I saw my mother, and I knew I had to do something." "So you did," she said, leaning into him, her body pressed against his. "So I did," he confirmed, wrapping his arms around her, holding her close. He turned to face her, his eyes filled with love and adoration. "I started by protecting you. Then I started caring for you. Then I started loving you. And somewhere along the way, you and Marcus became the most important things in my world, the center of my universe." She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. "I love you too, Tony, even though you're bossy and overprotective. And you have a tendency to solve problems by throwing money at them," she teased, a playful smile tugging at the corners of her lips. He laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated through her body. "Guilty as charged," he admitted, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "But you're also kind and gentle with Marcus, and you've never once made me feel less than you. You've treated me as an equal, even when we both know you could have used your power to control me, to manipulate me. Power without respect is just tyranny." He quoted his own words from months ago, his voice filled with sincerity. "And I could never disrespect the woman who showed me what real strength truly looks like, the woman who taught me the meaning of unconditional love." "So what happens now?" she asked, tilting her head back to look at him, her eyes filled with anticipation. "Where do we go from here?" He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, his movements deliberate, and Alicia's breath caught in her throat. "Now," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring, sparkling brilliantly in the moonlight. "I ask you to make it official, Alicia, to let me be not just Marcus's stepfather, but your husband, your partner, your everything. To build a life together that's nothing like what either of us came from, and everything we both deserve." "Tony, I know it's fast," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I know there are still risks, still complications, still shadows from the past. I know my past isn't completely behind me yet, but I also know that every day with you and Marcus is better than any day before. And I want every day after this one to be ours, to be together. Will you marry me, Alicia Carter? She thought about that day, 6 months ago, standing in the dining room with a bandage on her face, terrified of losing her job, feeling utterly alone and vulnerable. She thought about the journey since then, the fear, the trust, the gradual opening of her heart to a man who should have been all wrong, but who was somehow perfectly right. Yes, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Yes, Tony, I'll marry you. When he slid the ring onto her finger, it felt like the ending of one story and the beginning of another, a new chapter filled with hope and promise. The maid and the mafia boss, the woman who survived and the man who protected, together they built something that defied every expectation, broke every rule, and proved that sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the ones that last forever. Inside, Marcus slept peacefully, safe and loved, surrounded by the warmth of a family that had been carefully, intentionally built. He had parents who would move heaven and earth to keep him safe and happy. And in the morning, they would all wake up together as a family, bound not by blood or obligation, but by the kind of love that conquers fear and turns strangers into home. And so, Alicia Carter's story comes full circle, from a woman hiding her bruises and her fear to someone who found not just protection, but genuine, lasting love in the most unexpected place. Her story reminds us that sometimes, the people we least expect to care are the ones who change our lives forever. That real strength isn't about never needing help. It's about having the courage to accept it when it's offered with genuine care and unwavering support. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of unexpected love and second chances, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear that their story isn't over yet. Drop a comment below, telling us what you thought about Alicia and Tony's journey. We read every single one of them and we love hearing from you. And remember, the right person won't just accept your past. They'll help you build a better, brighter future. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.